first of all, into federal politics, and on the line is Libby Coker, the federal MP for Corangamite. Libby, good morning.
Good morning, Mitchell. How are you? Staying well?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you. In these circumstances, how's everything down there on the surf coast?
Oh, it's good. I'm actually in the office in Warm Ponds today. We're going well. We've just had our couple of weeks of Parliament, and I've been in the Parliament remotely in the chamber, which has been a very new experience for everyone.
How does that work? I mean, it seems to work well. I've watched a little bit of it on TV, and for the most part, it seems to have gone off without a hitch.
Look, I think we're lucky because our offices are hardwired, which means that we don't have the connectivity problems which some other people are experiencing in our region, unfortunately. But in relation to chamber, it means that we can actually be really beamed in to Parliament and be able to give speeches. We're not able to vote, but we are able to give speeches, to ask a question in question time, to speak on a matter of public importance, to do adjournment speeches. I did do a couple of speeches myself. The one that I would have really liked to do if we hadn't been gagged by the Morrison government was the environmental bill, which was really disappointing because we were opposing this bill, the Labor Party, because it is really a retrograde step. It's a rehash of Tony Abbott's failed approach to the environment, and it's going to have an impact on our region if it was to go through. I mean, we need really robust laws. They're what have saved the Daintree, the Franklin River in the past, and we've got real issues with biodiversity. So that was a real disappointment. So I put my speech up on social media anyway, and I must admit, whilst technology can be frustrating, at these times it can also be a real asset.
What are the changes that are proposed under that bill?
Basically, they're looking at the controls around the environment. It looks at controls for waterways, for biodiversity. Labor is wanting an environmental protection body that is a national body rather than state, and it is devolving responsibilities to states on important issues around the environment, when really I think the federal government has a very strong role to play in terms of our biodiversity and protection of environmental assets, our iconic assets. And I think there's also a role to be played in terms of protection of vistas, particularly in our region. That's so important. Vistas to the ocean, levels of development, green belts between townships, and land care, for example, is really important. How do we support land care? It touches on many things. It's a very important piece of legislation. So I'll continue to fight to ensure we get that. I think our people in Corangamite want strong, robust environment laws.
So in terms of the virtual parliament, seems to work reasonably well, and at local government level, of course, the councils are sitting virtually. Do you think we should be rolling this out at a state level? Because there's a lot of debate about whether or not state parliament should be sitting. If we can get it to work for federal parliament, why not state?
Look, I think that's something that each state has to make up its own mind on. I feel federally that the virtual chamber, in terms of beaming in, is a good idea. I think for us the challenge is in Victoria is the issue of getting to Canberra with hard borders, which the Victorian Parliament doesn't have that issue. We, in order to get to Canberra, have to quarantine for 2 weeks. It is a challenge for many parliamentarians with young children, students, their children studying at home, with having a caring role with a parent or relative. It is difficult, and if you've got two parents working from home, particularly in Melbourne, and you've got children that need to be cared for, it's tough. So the virtual Parliament has been a way that we can still perform our role. And I know that all people who've been elected want to do that. So I think virtual's good, but we are in a different position to the state government because we're all within the one state. We don't have to cross hard borders to get to Parliament as we do in Canberra.
Over the weekend, we heard the Premier announce the roadmap out for Victoria and what the easing of restrictions might look like, and that became a federal issue yesterday with the Prime Minister getting up and offering a bit of a sharp critique of the state government. Some of the things he said included, Sydney would be in curfew if we had the same criteria, and he also criticised Victoria's contact tracing. So it's become a federal issue and an issue of federal-state relations now.
Look, I think we should take the politics out of this. It's not only Victoria that is faced with issues around restrictions. I know that we're in a worse position, but the issues of borders closed is across the nation, and what Daniel Andrews is doing is really putting people first, putting the safety and health of people before politics. It would be very easy for the Premier to say, yes, let's open up. But when we all look at this without politics and rationally, we cannot open up until the numbers are right. We've got to look at the science, and we've got to look to the future. We don't want to be going back into lockdown again in 2 months' time. And I know how hard this is. I've just been on the line this morning talking to businesses in Apollo Bay. Like their petrol station's been closed for weeks and weeks while it's being upgraded. The great thing is that it's actually going to open ahead of time, which is some small good news for the people of Apollo Bay, but they're doing it really hard. And I feel for businesses, and I think that JobKeeper, we need to make sure we keep JobKeeper for areas along our coastlines for businesses and workers to pull us through, because COVID's not going to be over for some time, and we need to do our best to keep those businesses going. So I'd really encourage the federal government to continue with JobKeeper for some time into the future.
And in terms of Apollo Bay, the Premier spoke in his press conference and said they were watching the Geelong corridor closely. They were concerned, and there was a report over the weekend that COVID was detected in Apollo Bay wastewater. So how concerned are you about the notion that perhaps the rest of regional Victoria could open up, but Geelong stays in lockdown, and by extension other parts of the area in Corangamite?
Look, that is hypothetical, and I really don't want to talk in hypotheticals because, I think we've got to look at what science is and what the decisions are based on that science. And I will always listen to the Chief Medical Officer and respect those decisions. So I don't really believe it's wise to talk about hypotheticals because it's not the reality we're actually facing. I think that the things that Victorians are really concerned about, it's about their jobs. It's about what we can do working together, local, state, federal, to make sure that JobKeeper is in place, that we have aged care facilities that are safe, that we have people who are trained effectively, that we have the right safe numbers of nurses and trained people in our aged care system, that we have a COVID safe app that is working, and that we support people in their mental health needs. There are a lot of people, particularly young people, who are doing it hard at this time, and we need to look at what more we can do to support people.
In terms of aged care, which you mentioned there, that's been put well and truly into the spotlight during COVID-19. I saw that the Labor Party's put out a plan, what it would like to see happen to aged care. What can the federal government do right now, do you think, that would improve the situation immediately? Because clearly there's some real concerns there.
Yeah, look, I think paid pandemic leave is one of the most important things, so that casual workers are not moving from one aged care facility to another. This is really important. I think in the longer term, we certainly need to look at casualisation, because that has been exposed as a real issue because people do not have secure work. So in that situation, they're more inclined to go to work even if they've got a sniffle, because they are worried about how they will otherwise put food on the table. So we need to look at what we can do to provide people with secure work. We also do need to look at protective clothing. I think the amount of protective clothing is less of an issue than it was, but we need to ensure that it's worn correctly, that there is really very robust training in infection control to prevent infection spreading in aged care facilities. And also I think that aged care facilities need to be in very close communication with families of those who are in aged care. The communication is so important because when you've got aged care facilities in lockdown, families are anxious and they need to know what's going on. And so that really clear, regular, compassionate approach to communication is really vital. But I would like to do a shout out to all the providers in the Corangamite region and all the healthcare workers who are working so hard on the front line. We have not had an outbreak as yet, and I feel for those where it has happened, and I think that we need to be exceptionally vigilant in aged care, so that people are safe and that we don't see a spread of the virus into the community.
Well, Libby, thank you very much for being on the program. We'll catch up with you again soon.
And hopefully next time we speak, Mitchell, that we will have some better news. The numbers of COVID, the numbers are going down, which is really fantastic considering a number of weeks ago we had high cases of the virus on the rise. Now we're down, we're getting into double digits, and hopefully we can get to single digits. So I wish everyone in the community well, stay safe, and we will get through this together. Thanks, Mitchell.
No worries. Thank you very much, Libby Coker, joining us there, the federal MP for Corangamite.